lovely to meet you all virtually. My name's Naomi Smallwood. I am an editor in television drama. So I'm just going to try and whiz through a little bit about kind of this world, kind of my journey through it. And if there's time, I've got a small sort of case study at the end to just sort of talk about how all of that comes together. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of sort of post-production, what I do within that, and what some of the other departments do, just so that everyone has a vague idea of sort of the terminology I'm using. So I'm an editor. In some genres, that's sort of known as the offline editor, but essentially, I'm the person who puts the material together. So I get the material that they've shot the previous day, I do a cut of it, then I work with the director and the producer and then the production company and the broadcaster. So I'm very much working with the material that's coming in. We work very closely with the other departments and we do sort of temporary things to show what the next steps will look like. But essentially we are responsible for the storytelling and the putting together of the material. So another job within post-production is color grading. So that is taking the material or the finished episode, and the colorist or the grader will look, as the title implies, at the color. They'll look at the kind of, saturation and contrast levels. It's a very detailed technical job, and they will just make the show look as visually brilliant as possible. There is then also a sound department, so that's broken down into effects, so the sound effects, that are added, so stuff that wasn't shot in cameras, things that they need to add. There's kind of two parts of that. There's the sort of digital side and then what they'd call the Foley side, where they sort of, sit, and you've probably seen videos of people kind of tapping things to material to make it sound like someone's footsteps, that sort of thing. And then there's also the very digital side of sort of pre-created sound effects and putting those together. Then there is the dialogue sound, so that is people who cleans up basically what has already been shot. And then there is visual effects department. I'm sure most people know what visual effects are, if something, they need to add to a fire or something, or CGI backgrounds, that's that department. And then online editing is another very technical job. They can do some sort of smaller bits of the visual effects department as well. So if something, it just needs a bit of a cleanup. So for example, there's a bit of reflection in someone's sunglasses, or if there was like a plant behind me, it's sort of an easy thing to do, they would sort of remove that. And they'll also do the technical things, sort of like adding sort of clocks and bars and tone and all that sort of thing. And they will normally be responsible for sort of putting together all of the bits that have been provided by all of these departments. So that is a very, very rough overview of what the post-production world looks like. I'm going to focus in on the editing route because that's my experience in the industry. Okay, so I mean, the first thing to mention with this world is really the quicker you can have a CV, the better. So this is the CV that I left Ravensbourne University with. Ravensbourne are absolutely fantastic at teaching you all the right stuff, absolutely, but having industry links, sort of providing you lots of opportunities to go out there and get work experience. And that's just something I really recommend doing, whether you go to the wonderful Ravensbourne or not, is just get out there, see if people will give you a day shadowing them, see if people will give you a day sort of being a runner, doing a lot of very junior jobs, and just sort of have a CV, because it's really nice as an editor or as an assistant, if you're hiring, to see someone who has just a little bit of real world experience and has shown a little bit of initiative as well in going out there and getting their own experience. And the other thing I would say that you can start doing now, if you're interested in this world, is start looking at the software that is used at a professional standard. Now, obviously, sometimes the full versions can be very expensive, but there are a couple of industry standard bits of software that you can download for free. You can download them right now and just start to play, find material. It doesn't matter what the material is, like try and get it in the system, get it wrong, look at the forums, try and figure out the kind of the back room of these bits of software, because that's going to really stand you in good stead. The first one is Avid First, which is a scaled down version of Avid Media Composer. Now, if you want to work in, say, high-end TV drama, in fact, any TV drama nowadays, if you want to work in film, if you want to work on these sort of bigger projects, which have a lot of people working on them, really Avid is the industry standard. Premiere sort of trying to sneak in at the moment, but it doesn't have the same sort of multi-user capacity. So really, if you're interested in getting into this part of the industry, learning Avid will really get you a long way. So if you're Googling it, what you need to Google is Avid First. This is a scaled back version of the software that we use, but it's pretty comprehensive. So it limits you in terms of how many kind of bins, which are sort of our kind of little files that we keep sequences and clips in, you can have, and it limits you a bit in terms of how many video and audio tracks you can work with. But a lot of the other functionality is full functionality. So I'd really recommend that, and it's free. The other one I'd recommend, if you're interested in color grading, or if you're just interested in sort of the more sort of technical backroom side of post-production. Apologies, it's telling me my internet connection is unstable. So I'm just going to turn my camera off so that you guys can hopefully still hear me. So DaVinci Resolve is mostly used by colorists. It's predominantly color grading software, but they're branching out. You can do bits of editing in it. And we also often use it in this side of the industry for things like transcoding. Now, transcoding is basically where you just take a file and make it into a different format. So normally it's like you make it into something smaller to work with, especially if you've got a lot of material coming in, and then you relink it to the high res material at the end. So if you're interested in that side of things, definitely download DaVinci. Again, there is a free version of it, which is pretty comprehensive. The last thing I would mention, so this isn't something you need to download, this is fully online, and it's not something we use in the industry, but Photopea is very, very similar to Photoshop. It works in a very similar way. And again, it doesn't have all of the features that the latest version of Photoshop would have, but it is free. And again, it will just get your head into, if you're thinking about working with graphics and that sort of side of things in TV and how that might work and how you might make a graphic and then maybe put it into Avid First, for example. That is a great way to just get your head around just how that sort of software works. So that is all stuff that you can do now. You don't need to wait for someone to give you an opportunity to do that. You can just download that software and get straight in, and it won't cost you a penny. Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the jobs that I have done in this world. It's very focused on the editing route. So I started as a runner in a post-production facility. So post-production facilities are basically, we call them post houses. They have quite often what we call dry hire suites. So a production company will rent them out and put their editors and their assistant editors in there. So I was a runner there, so I was getting teas and coffees and lunches and that sort of thing for people. And then moved into being a tech op. So that was also with this same post house / post production company. And so this has a few different names. So for me, it's tech op. Some people it's technical runner, edit support. It is basically as a very technical backroom. If an editor has a problem with their Avid, you are the first port of call. There's a lot of sort of technical delivery stuff that I won't go too deep into now because we've not got too long. So those are jobs that you tend to do on like a normal permanent employment contract. If you then want to work in TV drama and you want to work on shows, you have to leave a job like that and go freelance. The advantages from having done the other jobs is that you will started to make quite a lot of connections in the industry. And so you tend to start as either a trainee assistant editor or a second assistant editor. You'll spend a bit of time doing those jobs, step up to being a first assistant editor who is sort of responsible for all of the backroom cutting room stuff, basically. I sometimes call it anything but the edit. There's a job called an assembly editor, which is not every show has one, but that's where you do like the first cut, but then you hand it over to another editor who does the working with the director, the production company, all the rest of it, and they sort of finish off the edit. And then editor, which is the person who puts together the show. So apologies for going through this really quickly. I just want to throw as much information at you as possible in the 20 minutes that I have. So this slide here is sort of my journey through the industry, and I'm not going to talk about every single job that I've done, but I just wanted to put this slide together just to show you that it's really not a straight line. You'll see that I did some stuff in a post-production house, and then I got a freelance job on a show, which is kind of what I want to do, and then I had to go back to the post-production house. Then I was the second assistant editor for a bit, and then I wanted to step up. I wanted to be a first assistant editor, and I didn't quite get the opportunity, but I still need to earn money. So I went off and I did some freelance stuff, and then I did a bit of cover work, which was sort of first assisting, but sort of just for a week or two here or there. And then, I got some other assistant work. I got to do a bit of assembly editing, but then that was all in amongst being an assistant. A lot of it was at the same time as being an assistant. And then still spent quite a lot more time being an assistant editor. You notice I've written COVID career break in bold because the industry basically shut down during COVID, and we've had a few more sort of industry slowdowns since. So this is not to put anyone off. It's a wonderful industry, it's a wonderful job, but this is just a bit of a reality check about what the journey through this industry looks like. It's not a straight line. You don't just start working for a company and keep getting promoted until you're in the position you want. You have to sort of jump around a bit, and sometimes you just have to take the job that pays the bills. So what does that entail? What does all this assisting work, all this backroom work, what does that look like before I can make that jump into being an editor? Again, not going to talk into any great detail about any of these things, but again, I just wanted to put this slide together just to show you the breadth of it, and also to show you at this point how little of it is creative, how much of it is technical, which is why I'm saying to really get a grip on as much industry software as you can, because that will really help you in the industry. So it can be very technical stuff, it can be very organizational stuff, it can be getting the editor and director a cup of tea or their lunch or anything like that. It's a lot of talking to other departments, it's a lot of media management, all the rest of it. So then hopefully, yay, I'm an editor, I've got my first break. But again, I just wanted to put this slide together because I wanted to show you what that looks like. So great, I got my first editing job, and then I stepped back a bit and did an assembly editor job, then I was an editor again, and then I struggled to get work, so I did some assistant editor cover because that paid bills. And again, that happened again and again, and I felt like I was on a little roll. And then I'm currently sat in the cutting rooms for some IT dramas that I'm helping out with the assisting again on, because the industry's slow. I need to pay my bills. Okay, and this is just, again, I don't put anyone off, but this is again just a little slide to show some of the realities of working in this industry. It is long hours, and that can have an effect on your mental health. And all I really want to say about this is more about this slide here, which is this industry is wonderful, it's creative, there's lots of brilliant things going on, but just be part of a union, have some stuff that interests you outside of work, have, a football club, a drama club, whatever it is outside of work, just to something to slightly ground you into the world outside the industry, because the industry is sort of its own little bubble and world, and it's really important to have something that grounds you in reality, basically. Okay, so I want to talk, how long have I got? 3 minutes. I've got 3 minutes to have to try and talk you through a little bit of a clip from Code of Silence, which is the job I was an editor on. So I'm just going to play you the first minute of this clip.
There. What's that? What did he send? Alice, we're missing this. What is this?
He didn't turn up for a meeting. And he asked Cruella to reschedule it.
Okay, so that's struggling a bit, but I think it's very short, but I think even that I'm hoping has given you just a little bit of a flavour of the show. So I just want to talk a little bit about how this was an editing job for me, but how you have to really think about how you're working with all the other departments all the time. So this show is about a woman who is deaf. So one of the questions we had to ask is when was the sound design entering her world? So the sound team did the final sound design and they did an absolutely beautiful job of it. But the deciding when we go in and out of Alison's point of view is an edit decision. So we were sort of creating this sort of temp sound world as we went along, and every time we did a cut, that slightly changed. So again, you just have to be a little bit aware of where the project's going and a little bit aware of how to do things which might not, inverted commas, be your job. Another thing you'll notice from that is that there were sort of these evolving captions on the screen. So again, that's an online job. That's something they do in the online edit, but we had to know how to generate versions of those captions in our side of things and the offline cut, and we had to make those decisions. We had to make those decisions about what can Alison see, what can she read, and what are we going to follow along with. Visual effects, what do we see on the screens, what material are we putting on there, what roughly are those screens going to look like. And then you've got all of the stuff to do with more traditionally the edit job. This scene was primarily about Alison, the show's about Alison, but there are lots of other people in that scene. There are lots of police, and ITV were particularly keen that we kept those featured because ITV are very good at crime dramas and they always want that thread going through. They always want the story to be told very clearly. So, this scene, I'm aware I'm running out of time, was originally a longer scene in episode 1. I lost half of that scene to episode 1, and then we picked up again in episode 2. So we had to start the scene differently. We had to go wider. We had to have a couple of lines in there that clarified where we are. So that was a huge whirlwind. So I apologize for how quickly I've stormed through this presentation, but I just hope that I have given you all a little idea about what the world of post-production is, what the different roles that you could look at are, what you can start doing now, and also just to give you an idea of how interconnected all of the jobs within post-production are, and how you need to have a creative brain, absolutely, a story brain, definitely learn story, keep that in your head 100%. But keeping up with technology, which is something Ravensbourne are fantastic at, is also, especially in the early days, especially when you being, a technical assistant or an assistant editor, is such an important part of that world as well. So that's the end of my presentation. Thanks very much for having me. I have a feeling I've talked for too long for any Q&A, but